Hey, Mystic here, and welcome to the Mystic Games Experience. In today's video, I will be doing a Starter's Beginner's Guide for D&D 5e. This will focus on official D&D products and books. I will be using TierMaker just for the simple ease, so you guys can follow along. Before we jump into the actual tiering out of products in this video, just let me explain the different types of products. You have your core and supplemental books. These are your rule books, essentially, also involved in character creation, different classes, different races, all that kind of stuff. You have your campaign guides. These provide you with like world information. If you're into Critical Role, they have a book for that. If you're not really into Critical Role, they have other campaign guides just for the Forgotten Realms, for Magic the Gatherings worlds, so you can kind of immerse yourself in those worlds. You also have adventure books. These give you a story to follow. If you're a DM and you want your players to go through a certain story, you can buy a book. It will give you certain levels that your characters need to be. Your players make those characters and they go through the adventure. You also have sets. These are good for brand new players, or brand new groups of players, I should say, that are trying to get into D&D. And then you also have official accessories, which I'll get more involved in what those are by when I click on each one. So let's start with the beginner's set, the gift box here. And I'm going to put that in highly recommended. Some people might be like, you're not putting that in must have? No, I'm not. Because if you're a player and you're looking to get into Dungeons and Dragons, you don't need the whole box to start. If you have played Dungeons and Dragons before 5e and you've enjoyed the experience, like you played the starter set, you really are like, man, I want to get into this, I want to buy the products, I would say yes, it's a must-have. If you're just getting into it and this is going to be the first thing you purchase, I'd put it in highly recommended, because you may not want to get all the books. You might only want to get the ones for the player if you don't plan on hosting games. That being said, let's go with the Player's Handbook. I put that in as a must-have book. This is your rule book. This is good for both the Dungeon Master and the player. Just get the Player's Handbook if you're trying to get into the game. It's good to have. It's good to see the rules. It's good to read through and just learn how the game functions and works if you haven't played. It's a good book. Monster Manual, I'm going to put in highly recommended. This is your stat blocks. This is more for DMs. You do have stat blocks in the Player's Handbook as well in the back. If you're a player and you just kind of want to see what stat blocks are, they do exist in the Player's Handbook. They're very basic ones. But the Monster Manual is for more advanced. If you want to get into dungeon mastering or game mastering, that's the book for you. Along with that, the Dungeon Master's Guide will go right next to it, as this gives you a lot of good ideas for your world that you're trying to create from scratch if you're doing so. And I would put that there. Volos is actually a good book to get. It is a core book, I believe, and it just has a lot of good information. It has character creation for players and for the DM. You'll see most of the stuff I put in S tier is going to be stuff that both the DM and the player can make good use of. Xanathar's Guide to Everything will also go into the S tier. It's a core and supplemental book as well. It's good for players to have the information there. It gives additional spells and additional rules, that kind of stuff. Mordenkainen Tomb of Foes. Boom! That will go in S tier as well. This is also a core book. Most core books I will be putting in S because I believe they're good for both the player and the DM to have. They're multiple uses, whereas certain books I feel like if you're going to be a player and that's really all you plan on doing, you don't need, really you don't need campaign guides, you don't need adventure books, and you don't need the sets. But that's just my personal opinion. Anyone can disagree with me, honestly. And that's, open to interpretation. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, I will also put into S. I believe these are the first 5 books you should get if you're new to D&D. And I would actually probably buy them in that order. Actually, Tasha's Cauldron I could probably put up in front of Volos at this point. I think that goes good with the Player's Handbook. And then I think the order beyond that is correct for a new player. If you're brand new, don't get the other 4 until you get the Player's Handbook. There's also starter sets, which I'm going to get into, and those are really good for new players as well. Fizzbands, I'm going to put that as a highly recommended book. Now, if you're into dragons, super good book. This is a core supplemental book as well, I believe. So it's mostly rules. It has character creation. It actually updates character creation from the player's handbook. So that's good to have. And then you have Mordenkainen's Multiverse. I'm going to put that behind there as well. This is another core book. And it has a, monster stat blocks in it as well. This is a good overall book as well, but I wouldn't put it in S tier. Okay, so we have Sword Coast Adventurers Guide. I'm going to put that in C tier because it's outdated at this point. This is like one of the first campaign books they made, and most of the information in it has been rewritten into other campaign books, campaign books and supplemental books, so I just don't think you need it anymore. If you're into Magic, you have Ravnica's Guide. That will go into A. It has good character creation, stuff like that in there. I think it's a good book to have. I recommend it. I just put it behind the others. Acquisitions Incorporated. This I'm actually going to put in front of Ravnica's Guide. This gives you like business in the game. So if you want to run a game that has like business in the background or even in the forefront, this is a good book to have. It gives you rules for that kind of stuff. And it also puts you in their world. Eberron is a good book as well. I'll put that behind Ravnica as a highly recommended. That's all I'm going to say about it. It's a good book. It gives you that campaign world ideas for that. So I would say that's more for DMs. If you're into Critical Role, you have Wildemount. I'm actually going to put that up higher because I know a lot of people get into D&D because of Critical Role. That book I'll put in A tier. It just gives you the world of Wildemount for Critical Role. So if you're into that and that's a campaign that you would like to, make a campaign in that world, that's a good book to grab. We also have Mythic Adios, which is a Greek-inspired Magic the Gathering book. Has some monster stat blocks, some of that kind of stuff. Those rules I think that one even has some races in it as well. Most of these, the campaign and core books have race character creation rules in them. So I would actually put that pretty high. I actually like it because I'm a fan of Greek mythology. I'm kind of a nerd there for that. So I'm going to put that in front of the other book. Ravenloft is a great book. I like the horror of it. I'm actually going to put that as one of the highest, probably the highest campaign book. If you want to make like a spooky horror story, Ravenloft is the book for you. It gives you like ideas for that. It gives you monsters for that. It's just a really good book if you're looking to run a horror type campaign. I highly recommend it. Strixhaven is also a great book. I'm going to put that right behind it. This helps you run in, obviously these are all campaigns, so these are all different worlds like Strixhaven, Ravenloft, all this stuff takes place in different worlds just so you guys understand. But this also adds like a school mentality, like magical school, like Harry Potter. So if you want to run like a Harry Potter-ish campaign, it'd be a great book to grab, Strixhaven, just for ideas of how you can make that world better. Now we're going to get into the adventures. Both the Dragon books, The Horde and The Rise of Tiamat, have been remade into The Tyranny of Dragons. So if you're going to get the Tyranny of Dragons book if you're able to. I don't think this campaign was very good. Most people I've spoken to about this campaign don't really care for the campaign. I like dragons, and I'm putting this in the C category. Let's put it that way. This is one of the last books I would get if I were going to buy the books. Princess of the Apocalypse, I'm going to put in C as well. It's not a bad book. I just don't think it's good enough to be in the B tier. I'm going to same with Out of the Abyss. These are earlier adventure books, and I just feel like these aren't very well made. This one has more to do with demons. Curse of Strahd, I'm actually going to put into high B tier. It's a very, very good adventure. Ravenloft book would probably be helpful if you're experienced as a DM and you want to insert some additional stuff into the Curse of Strahd. You could probably do that and actually make it a better campaign now with Ravenloft. You also have the starter set for Curse of Strahd. I'm going to put that in behind the actual Curse of Strahd simply because I just don't think it's necessary out of the starter sets that you can kind of get. You have the Storm King's Thunder, I believe that's what this book was called. I'm actually going to put this next to Tyranny of Dragons. I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. I haven't heard too many people like, oh man, this is a fantastic adventure. It was alright. Tomb of Annihilation is very good. I'm going to put this behind Curse of Strahd. It has a lot of good ideas if you want to become a DM at some point. This is one of the adventure books, along with Curse of Strahd, I would use for ideas. Same with Waterdeep, the Dragon Heist. This is a good book as well because it helps you incorporate heists into your campaign. If that's something that interests you, that's a good book. Dungeon of the Deep Mage, it was well written. I would put it behind Dragon Heist. Set into Avernus. This is a pretty good campaign. I think I'm going to keep on going and put it right in the B tier, right behind Curse of the Mad Mage. If you're looking to do an ice adventure, you have Icewind Dale, I believe it was called. And I'm actually going to put that right behind Descent into Avernus. I think that's where it goes. It's kind of like an icy adventure. It has a few unique stat blocks, I remember, although they might be out now in other books. That was something I used to keep track of. The Witch... Oh, what's this? The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. That's what it was called. Alright. Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I'm going to put that in B, but I'm going to put it in the center of B tier. I think it had some unique stuff to it. It seemed pretty interesting overall. Not a bad book. Call of the Netherdeep. This is a Critical Role book, and I'm going to put this behind Dragonheist. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to put this in front of Dragonheist because this had an interesting concept of making a group of adventurers that kind of corresponds with the player adventures. So as a DM, I would say this is a good book for inspiration as well. And I'm going to put it there. The Yawning Portal is a bunch of small adventures, or just a bunch of different adventures. I'm going to actually put that behind Dragon Heist because it's just a bunch of little different things that give you ideas. You also have the Saltmarsh book, and I'm going to actually put that in A tier at the end, simply because it has ship rules in it. I believe it's considered an adventure book, but it is actually good for rules as well, because it has like ship rules, how ships work in the D&D world. So if you get into DMing, that's actually a pretty good book to have. You have Candlekeep Mysteries. That's kind of like the Yawning Portal. It has adventures in it, I believe. Nothing in Candlekeep drew my attention for me to put it higher on the tier list. I'm going to put it that way. I have not seen The Radiant Journey. That's the next one on the list here. I'm going to put that in at the end of B simply because I haven't got enough information to make a good quality assessment on it. It looks very interesting, and being that it's a newer book and they tend to be better than the older ones, I would say it's probably a good spot. It may be even higher. Now, if you're a new player and you haven't played yet, and you have friends that are interested in playing, you have starter sets. So I'm going to put the starter sets in S tier. And not because I believe the starter sets are a must-buy and you have to buy all the starter sets, but if you're trying to get someone into D&D, the starter sets are a great idea. I put them in the order that they were released. This is like the secondary starter set because I don't have the original picture in here. Then you have the Essentials kit, then you have Rick and Morty, Stranger Things, and then you have the new starter set, which when that comes out, I would actually recommend the new starter set. From what I've seen, it's like a better version of all of them, so I'm going to put that in front. If you have friends that are into Rick and Morty, I would recommend that over the other starter sets. If you have friends that are into Stranger Things and you're trying to get them into it, I'd recommend that starter set over the other starter sets, simply because it gives them a reason to want to try. But I believe both the Essentials kit and the original starter set with the green dragon on it there were very good. And if you're trying to get players into D&D and they're already interested, like, hey, I would like to give a game a try, these are great to grab. I would highly recommend these if you're a new player and you have a bunch of new player friends that want to give it a go. And then if you don't, and you've already gotten into D&D and you've played and you're like, I want to get more stuff for it, I would say potentially buy a starter set just so you have it on hand for new players, but then go with the rest of my list with you get the player's handbook, get, you know, Tasha's Cauldron, Volos, Xanthars, and Mordenkainen's, etc., etc. That's the way I would go about it. You also have the new starter gift set, which I'm going to put behind the core books, and actually I'm actually going to put it behind Strixhaven. I think Strixhaven and Ravenloft have a lot to offer outside of just being good campaign guides. So the starter set for that just comes with the Multiverse book instead of one of the other books. It's not really something that you need to buy. The Spelljammer set, which I have not seen, but I can tell you it has a campaign book from what I read, a core book, I believe, and then an adventures book. I'm actually going to rate this in front of the new gift set because I feel like if you get the starter set, like the original 3 books, this is something I'd probably get before I get the other gift set books. Also, you wouldn't need the gift set at that point because you would already have most of the books from it anyways. But Spelljammer is supposed to take place in space, which is going to give you space rules, which as a DM or as a player even, you know, that might be something you're interested in and seems really cool to me. So I'm going to put that up high because I think that's something everyone can use, whether you're a DM or a player. As of right now, they most likely will sell the books separately, and if they do so, the campaign guide and the core book would be something I put up and highly recommended, and I'd probably put the adventure in B, you know, depending on how good it was. Maybe even A, that has enough stuff that makes it unique to warrant an A position. Most things in S and A are going to be good for both player and DM, whereas I feel like when you get into B and the C tiers, you're looking more as a DM. So S and A, if you're a player, fantastic books. If you're a DM, you can go all the way down to C without an issue. So let me get into the end here because I don't want to make this too long of a video. We're getting on 20 minutes. We have the Dungeon Master screen. I'm going to put that in B tier, and I'm going to put it high B tier because, as I said, this is more of a Dungeon Master thing. It's not, players won't need this. This is good if you're going to run a game and you're sitting at a table with friends. It blocks them out. It allows you to put like sticky notes on it if you want. It has information built into it for a DM. So I'm going to put that pretty high. You also have the Wilderness screen. I'm going to put that behind it. If you're doing a Wilderness like campaign, that's a good screen to have. I would actually say it's probably more useful than the original one. Dungeon one, on the other hand, I'm going to put last. Oops, I'm going to put last because I don't think it's very good. Unless you really need help constructing a battle map, I would say. I don't see the need for the dungeon one. I don't think it's that helpful. And then the 2 last things I'm going to get to are the campaign cases. You have one for monsters, and then you have one for terrain. And again, these are going to be in the recommended tier. I'm actually going to put these, I'm going to put these in front of the screen for the dungeon. That's how much I don't care for it. You're going to put, you know, these are your tokens. So if once you get into the game, you'll have a battle, you have your little tokens or your miniatures on the table, or you're playing on the computer and you have your tokens on the screen. If you're playing in person, the campaign cases seem fantastic for a DM to have. I'm going to put them as recommended because if you're a DM, again, they could be very helpful to you. As a player, you're probably not going to care to have these. That'd be something your DM brings to the table for you. Anyways, that's my tier list, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like, subscribe. This is my first video. I plan on doing a lot of tutorial D&D type things to help new players out. If you're just tuning in, you went to the end to see how I place things. Again, this is more for new players and then DMs. So if you're a player, SA. If you're a DM, S through C is fine. I think most of them have something to offer, except really the C tier I could even see DMs skipping out on. But I feel like pretty much S and A are must-haves, and then B has a lot of good things to offer, and C is kind of eh. Alright guys, thanks for watching my tier list, and have a great day.